Delbert Huber is in the geriatric unit at the Minnesota State Prison in Faribault. He is angry that tips continue to come into law enforcement and his son Tim. Did you have anything to do with Jacob Wetterling's disappearance?
No.
Did Tim have anything to do with Jacob?
No, he didn't have nothing to do with it either.
You never molested any boys or attacked any boys in downtown Painesville?
And he didn't either.
Huber says over the years he and Tim have confronted both rumors and questions about Jacob's abduction. Huber says Tim Larson, the man he and Tim were convicted of murdering, accused them in a letter and in person of being involved.
We were home. We didn't have nothing to do with it.
Delbert Huber says that Stearns County deputies first came to his farm back in 1989 asking questions. They asked you about the Wetterling case. And what did you tell them?
The first I knew about it.
So you didn't know that Jacob Wetterling had been taken?
No, not at that time.
You won't find many people who will recall the entire proper name. The Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act, signed by President Bill Clinton in 1994. The law used federal dollars to force every state to create a sex offender registry. It was meant to ensure the safety of kids everywhere and to give parents the knowledge and protection they would need to ensure their children were not in close contact with registered sex offenders. The standards remain tough, but there is criticism of them being too tough and leaping over what should be common sense. Welcome into MidPoint. Former attorney, now talk radio host, broadcasting into portions of several states, including California and Texas, also co-creator of the Amber Alert, Rick Roberts joins us. Rick, thanks so much for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Rick, I'm glad you joined us because when I saw this, you were the first one who came to mind in a lot of what's gone on with you and the Amber Alert over the years. A recent article in Slate magazine, also Slate the website, said sex offender laws have gone too far, saying draconian policies about sex offenses reflect our ignorance of them. And the one line that caught me in here was saying, what has changed is what science can tell us about the nature of sex offenders. So using that as a backdrop right now and knowing what you have gone through and the fight that you have fought for all these years, does that insult you that there are people asking if it's too tough?
You know, it's not insulting, and unfortunately it's not surprising. I know in California, just to monitor sex offenders, we had to fight the state legislature for almost a year. It's too expensive, it's too this, it's too that. You know, my bottom line is, okay, tell me how much the innocence of a child is worth. I'll start from there and see if I can raise the money. It's not to be expected that everyone is going to understand this. I mean, I've been working on this since 1994, starting in Kansas City, Dallas, San Diego, of course, Los Angeles. When you look at this, you know, the recidivism rate is higher than any other kind of crime. Most of them go unreported. You know, it's only the very big cases where, like the Westerfield case and some of the other cases that we were involved with. It's only then that the public, really pays attention. The fact of the matter is, there are child molesters everywhere, and I'm sorry, I don't believe some guy, whether he's in prison, he's not in prison. I'm not buying it. I've seen it too many times. For every one person they molest, there are probably a dozen more we'll never know about. Now, science, hey, I understand. I'm not living in the dark ages. DNA, things of that nature can come into play. But if you're going to err on the side of protecting that child. Once you take that away, once you take the innocence of a child away, that's something you can't ever replace. So you better be sure, you better be very, very sure the guy you're cutting loose is the right guy.
Doesn't that also mean that you have to be very, very sure that what you're talking about is an actual sexual offense? And I say that because there are numbers of stories out every single year that say this was a family member, this was a father, this was a mother, this was a brother, somebody involved, and it wasn't really what the child says it was. It may have been misconstrued. You will have people say that, and they will say that these are the people who don't deserve to be on this list and deserve to have this scarlet letter on their chest for the rest of their lives.
Well, you know, I look at it this way. We can forgive. We're a benevolent society. We can forgive, but we can't forget. And yes, I've received death threats. I've received all kinds of threats from family members. You don't understand. This wasn't like a stranger. This was a family member that was involved. Well, I'm sorry. That's even worse, because not only have you violated the innocence of a child, but you've also taken that child's trust, probably for the rest of their lives. So, you know, when somebody starts talking to me about, well, you know, it was inside the family, it wasn't like a stranger, to me that's even worse. But yes, I know the process. I know the steps. I know all the advocacy groups, and they are plentiful. The chances of convicting someone wrongly, while they do exist, we're fallible, we're human beings, but they're very, very slim.
Let me then give you the quote from Melissa Hamilton, who is an expert at the University of Houston Law Center, and she says, quote, "The assumption that sex offenders are at high risk of recidivism has always been false and continues to be false. It's a myth." How do you answer that?
I would love to debate her on that, and tell her
We can arrange that, by the way.
Tell her to bring her sources, because I will bring mine.
Okay, now, why do you then say that that is simply just completely and totally wrong?
Well, you have to take it case by case. I mean, a lot of wordsmithing goes into statements like that. Whether it was incest, whether it was an extended family member, they would never do it again. Whether you're talking about a serial child molester, just like we busted the guy up in Washington that was running a pedophile site. We busted a bunch of other guys south of the border, just south of San Diego, that had paid $10,000 to have sex with children. And you go back in these guys' background, and guess what? There's one gray area after another. So for them to say the recidivism rate is just not true, it's false. I mean, it's false. And I can cite case after case after case. And if she has the time, I'd be happy to do that.
We may just go ahead and try and arrange that. I got about 30, 40 seconds left. What should people then be looking for? Seriously now. Because people sometimes knee-jerk on these things, but what are the things that they need to know in order to find out if somebody is really a sex offender or is simply just not where you would consider them to be that bad, that evil? What's that line?
As parents, I mean, we know when our children are acting like they normally act, or when they're acting standoffish, or when something has bothered them. If you're a parent, you know that. You look for people, and by the way, sex offenders can be anyone. They can be coaches, they can be ministers, they can be police officers, they can be teachers, they can be the next door neighbor, they can be anyone. Unfortunately, I mean, it's just an evil thing that gets a hold of people, and they act out on it sometimes. Look for somebody that's getting way too close to the kids. I mean, somebody that has an inordinate amount of interest in a child. And I'm not saying all those people are sex offenders, but as a parent, you need to watch that, because once that innocence is taken, you can't replace it. It's gone.
Rick, I tell you what, I'm going to take you up on your offer. We'll try and set up that debate. We'll have you on here, and we'll see how it goes. I thank you for your time.
Anytime, my friend.
All right, next hour on MidPoint, a fascinating look inside the Secret Service. That and so much more coming up right here on MidPoint. Every day, we question everything.